Welcome to the Liberalish podcast. I'm your host, Marcus, and you'll hear from my co-hosts, Carly and Keith, momentarily. We also had one of our contributors, Ryan, also step up and join our discussion this week as well. We skipped last week just because of some scheduling conflicts, but came back in full force. I imagine that we'll do at least one or two more episodes before the holidays, and then come back strong after the Georgia runoffs in January. But there's still a lot that can happen between now and then. For instance, Donald Trump isn't going anywhere. We're so close to being free of him, but he's still out here doing shit. His latest is the executions of his, I think, 10th and 11th, actually his 9th and his 10th prisoners on death row. And there are 3 more that are scheduled, and if all of their executions go through as planned, then he will have executed 13 people this year, which will be the highest number for federal executions since, I want to say, 1896. Let's kind of put it into context. So we dive into that and more kind of criminal justice, just miscues. Miscues actually doesn't really cover the problems that we're having, but it is something that we discuss for at length on this episode. Then we also dive into Joe Biden and his cabinet, which is kind of going well. I don't think there is anything that's been obviously bad. There have been some quote-unquote swamp creatures, aka well-connected folks getting jobs. I think the only appointment that has people scratching their heads or shaking or wagging their fingers is the appointment of Tom Vilsack over Marsha Fudge, who wound up taking the HUD job, and we kind of dive into that and what we wanted to see happen and what should have happened. There's also that phone call between Biden and the NAACP leaders where they express their desires for him to tackle criminal justice reform, and he says, no, we're not going to do that because defund the police killed us at the polls. And we kind of tackle that conversation that's kind of been happening in the backgrounds for a lot of people that pay attention to politics, probably too much attention, but we offer our thoughts on that as well. And then we kind of just get mad at the Democratic Party for not being the best run organization or one that the people need. And then we also tackle, it feels weird to say we tackle racism, but it's something that's so prevalent in our society that it just seems weird to talk about politics as black people and not tackle it. So we dig into that as well, and how it kind of influences what we're seeing from the criminal justice issues to Biden's relationship with the NAACP and black voters, and then things like this COVID bill that's kind of still hanging around the House, and where the Senate might go, and what's happening to Neil Warnock in Georgia. You see it everywhere, and it's definitely something that we talk about today. So that and more you'll hear for the rest of this episode. So here's episode 13 of the Liberalish podcast. Enjoy.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Liberalish. I do apologize for us missing last week's episode. I was just too busy wrapping up finals, but it's over. I'm a free man now. We're back on track.
Woo!
And we have a very special guest here. I'd like to introduce to everyone here, Ryan. I think you did an episode with us before. Ryan's our social media guru.
Trying.
So try. So if anything happens on our Twitter account, don't yell at us. Don't yell at me, Carly, or Marcus. Please yell at Ryan. It's his fault. He's the guy you should
know the vibe, man.
Right, exactly. So welcome to the pod, Ryan. Welcome again. Pleasure for you to be here. All right. So we actually have some good news to start off here. This is probably breaking news. This might surprise at least half the country, but Joe Biden is our president-elect. And it's like official now.
For the 5th time this time. It's official.
How many times can you win? Or if you're Trump, how many times can you lose?
He keeps winning, man.
There'll be so much winning. So much more winning than you would ever even believe, right? That's what Trump told us.
Right, exactly. I'm glad he's carrying on to that. Right.
Wow,
Exactly.
Biden's just jacking Trump. He's just gonna make America great again and do all this winning for him. It's wild how that's gonna work out.
All right, man. I'm looking forward to his next 4 years. I mean, we're already off to a good start. He's won the presidency 5 times already and hasn't even started his term yet. So,
5-time president of the United States.
yeah. FDR has nothing on him.
Not a thing.
All right. So let's talk about our first section of the podcast, which is criminal justice reform. Let's dive into some good news before we go into some bad news. So California passed a law to require cops must either be 25 years old or at least have a 4-year degree in order to become a cop. So shout outs to the state of California for at least trying there. And that's all for our good news for criminal justice reform block.
But that's it. There's nothing else. You have nothing else to point to.
We have nothing else to point to.
Oof,
It's all pretty depressing.
We're not reforming anything at this space.
All right.
Oh, you're foreshadowing here, Ryan. You're foreshadowing.
We'll give it a couple months. All right. Gotta wait and see.
Yeah, we gotta wait and see here. So Brandon Bernard, in case you haven't known about him, he was a 40-year-old federal convict. He was recently executed. A little bit about his background was that he was 18 years old when he was charged. He was one of 5 gang members involved in a murder. I don't think he was actually the one to pull the trigger or anything like that.
No.
I think he was like an accessory to it.
He was he played a very minor role in it. He actually set the car on fire.
Mhm.
So they were put in the trunk. The other members told him to set the car on fire to, I guess, destroy the evidence. Before his execution, even like some of the jurors that were on his case, the prosecutor that tried his case had basically said they kind of regret giving him that sentence because of his role in it and also how old he was at the time. And I think that's important to notate because like I said, I'm against the death penalty. I mean, everybody has their own opinions, but I feel like our criminal justice system is way too flawed for that to even be a punishment, an option for punishment. If you think about how many people are wrongfully convicted and sit in prison for years, decades, their whole life, you can only assume that there's errors in capital punishment. Even Kim Kardashian had came out and basically pleaded to Donald Trump because he had gotten some of her other cases that she had been working with. Like she got the elder woman, the grandmother, I believe her name is Alice Johnson. She got her, she was able to get her life sentence. What's the word?
Commuted, right?
Yeah, commuted.
Yeah.
And it's just, and then before Donald Trump came into, before Donald Trump, there hadn't been a federal execution in 17 years. Yeah. And there's been, I'm sorry if my number's off. I'll fix it or I'll correct it like once it's done. But I believe there's been 12, and Donald Trump is responsible for 8 of them. So when you put all those factors together, you kind of start to wonder, like, what are we doing about capital punishment? And then I guess for me, that's something that I'm looking to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I know Kamala Harris has like kind of like a history of being tough on crime. So it's very interesting to see how maybe she's able to kind of fix some errors that she may have made in the past. And Joe Biden, considering he was Obama's vice president, and Obama was against the death penalty. He didn't there were no federal executions when he was the president. I'm curious to see if Joe Biden will follow in the same footsteps, or if he will, there's some reform in that, or if he'll, try to push forward getting rid of it completely. But I mean, I've always been really curious. I guess one of my biggest things with the death penalty is, again, our criminal justice system is severely flawed. It's very biased. And also I just think, it's morally wrong. It's morally wrong for another human being. Listen, like, judges are people just like you and I. They went to school just like the rest of us. They, that's just a career. That's their job. And I don't think it's fair for anyone to make a decision of whether or not someone lives or dies. If, me and you are two people. I don't think it's fair for another person to decide if someone lives or dies, especially considering how young he was. And he spent 17 years in prison, and prison officials had even said that he was, he did a lot of rehabilitation during his years incarcerated. He did a lot of work. He talked to youth. He talked to people that would, I guess, visit the prisons. Sometimes they have those programs where people visit prisons and they hear like stories. So basically he was encouraging people not to follow in his footsteps. So I think something has to be said for our criminal justice, which says that one of the goals of our criminal justice system is rehabilitation. And, I can't help but to wonder if someone proves or demonstrates them being rehabilitated or they're working towards rehabilitation, does that not count? Does that not matter? It's kind of like a contradiction, which is the story of the United States criminal justice system, is just a big contradiction. And there's, I believe, 4 more scheduled, 3 more scheduled. There were 5. Trump has 5 more that he has to carry out.
3 more scheduled. Yep.
There's 3 more because after Brandon, the day after Brandon, I forgot his name. I'm so sorry. I forgot his name.
Alfred Bourgeois.
Yeah, he was executed on Friday. And then there's 3 more. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that'll be 13 executions this year, which I think is the most, would be the most, actually already passed the most executions by a federal government since 1896. Just to kind of put it into context, that this is beyond the norm, and the fact that this is, this is something that these executions were scheduled back in 2019 by Bill Barr, and it's just in a time when with so much going on with with Corona and the pandemic, that this government is still kind of going through with these executions. It just speaks to the real just kind of evilness of this administration as a whole. And just it's sad. It's sad to see, especially as you got into the details about his name skips my head, but the young man who was killed for a crime he committed when he was 18, and it wasn't even a violent crime. So it's just sad that this is the state of affairs.
And I just want to say, a lot of people's theory is an eye for an eye, and I understand that, but Kim Kardashian ironically made a good point. Killing Brandon won't bring back what he did. It won't bring back the people that he lost, that he took away. And I think if we're really trying to punish people, I don't think that it equals out. I think there's a way to punish people properly. I believe in the prison system. I don't believe in the prison system that we have. I do believe that there needs to be severe reform when it comes to prison incarceration, mass incarceration. But it's not fair. It doesn't do any good. It doesn't, correct anything. It doesn't, and it's not a deterrent. It doesn't stop other people from committing like crimes similar to it. So it really has no real basis as to why, and it kind of contradicts the like the whole, we're a part of like there's an international Bill of Rights that, literally everyone applies with, and it completely contradicts that Bill of Rights, which gives us the right to life and it shouldn't be taken away by a government agency or any sort. So if you get the chance to read that and you think about that, you understand it doesn't really make any sense.
For sure, agreed. I mean, we really just don't focus on the actual rehabilitation. It's just removing the people from society. And then when you go back into society, it's a never-ending cycle. So our criminal justice system is a joke, like you said. But still on this topic, and even still more bad news. Last week there was a shooting in Columbus, Ohio, where a sheriff deputy was on the hunt for a fugitive. And so while he was on the hunt, quotation marks, he saw a black guy with a gun and shot him. And this poor guy died in front of his grandmother and his 5-year-old brother. Now, here's the thing. I know that in America, the Second Amendment seems to be pretty one-sided, but this guy actually had a license to carry. He had no warrants, no nothing. There was just really no excuse for this cop to talk to him. Also, this cop is claiming that he had a full-fledged verbal confrontation with this guy. There is not a soul to back that up. There's no cameras. There's nothing to back that up. So he could just pull out his card, walked up, shot the guy as he was trying to enter his house. So it just shows the need for just criminal justice reform, which leads us to our final topic in this pretty depressing section here. So Joe Biden, President-elect Joe Biden, he had a phone call with some civil rights leaders like NAACP for one, This phone call was leaked. I don't know which side leaked the phone call, but it was leaked. So we got the details of it. So basically, like the civil rights group really wanted Joe Biden to prioritize police reform. And Joe Biden's response to it was a little bit heartbreaking because he did kind of campaign for pushing for criminal justice reform and police reform. But his response to the civil rights leaders was simply like, "Hey guys, we got killed in the polls with defund the police. So let's not push police reform too hard right now." And it's just like, yikes, man. So what are you actually going to do, especially for the group of people who came out in like a huge bunch to get you elected?
You know
You know
what's
what? Go ahead.
I think maybe we should change the term. Like maybe the defund the police is what's getting people, because
Mhm.
I feel like people are thinking like, just take money away from the police, like just get rid of the police, and like we won't have any police on the streets, people will just be a free-for-all, like we just, and I think people should educate themselves more on exactly what we're asking when we say defund the police. It's just like I'm pretty sure we talked about this in previous, I think the last podcast we touched on this, but
Mhm.
um major cities like New York, LA and stuff like that, a lot of police departments have a large budget, like an
Mhm.
astronomical budget. But then when you look at the budget for other areas like public housing, education, healthcare, stuff like that, it's severely lacking. And so literally it's just it's like taking a cup and just, making sure each cup is equally full. Um, and that's it. I understand that there is a need there. Nobody's trying to get rid of the police. Some people
Yeah.
do want to get rid of the police like completely, but I think the people who are pushing for defund the police understand that that's not the realistic approach, but more
Mhm.
so, just like kind of like using maybe some of the budget that you have for like certain trainings, or hiring more people in certain communities that look like that come from that community. Like I think a lot of people are losing sight, and it's become like a radical thing, like, oh, the radicals just want to get, and I just think that's completely excuse my language, I think that's just stupid. And I think anyone who's smart enough or is really interested in making a change in this country, instead of just pointing the finger, complaining, or just kind of trying to do away with actual change, realizes that that's what we're asking. And I think that's a fair ask. So I hope that maybe he's just a little bit confused as to what we're talking about, but if not, then that's very upsetting, because that's something that needs to happen.
And
I
I
don't,
agree
I
with you
don't,
100%, though. But let me just clarify a couple of things, though. I think the Joe Biden camp did want to bring out the new term reimagine policing. I think that was like the new terminology they wanted to go with.
Okay.
But I do also want to emphasize none of the major civil rights groups that we kind of grew up with, none of them are really pushing for quote unquote defund the police. They are pushing for police reform.
Yes.
I think that was like the messaging and slogan that they were going for. I think defund the police is more so Black Lives Matter. My beef was this is like Joe Biden did kind of campaign on this. Democrats, in the House also did campaign on this. I think they were trying to push for like a registry for like, if a cop does something bad, they're going to have like a registry for that.
Yeah.
I think just my whole beef is like, now since you got elected, now you're starting to go away from those talking points out of fear of defund the police.
Right.
And I don't think we're not even talking about defunding the police. We're just talking about like reforming the police, and that's where the conversation lies.
I think that's because I mean this is all reflexive to what Democrats think happened in the polls, though. I don't think,
Right.
for instance, I think if if we don't suffer the huge losses, if the Democrats don't suffer the huge losses in the House, you're probably not going to see this defund the police, this drive against defunding the police, and people like Barack Obama going on TV and talking about how that's a non-starter, or we can't really talk about this. And I think criminal justice reform is just kind of suffering because there's this like reaction to what's to the election, and you're having people thinking about this in terms of electoral politics instead of what actually needs to get done in actual policy. And it's just hard to sell that, I think, for folks that aren't in major cities or don't have like that large, hard liberal wall that they can kind of rely on to get them elected. They're trying to they don't want that to be a priority, because that's hard to go back and sell to their constituents, to the folks that they're gonna have to turn around in 2 years and try to get them to vote to keep their office again. So I think that's So I kind of get where Biden is coming from, or I get why that they're doing that. I think it's unfortunate,
Mhm.
just because again, this is something that needs to get done. Like if you have people just being gunned down for no reason,
Mhm.
by cops, it's something that still needs to get fixed, and it's a problem for a large chunk of the population. And if you're not going to go and address it because you're afraid of how other people are going to vote who don't have to worry about it, it's problematic. It's a problem. It's a huge problem that something needs to be done about it. And I don't know if that's being stressed or if that's something. It seems like it should have been stressed, especially after the whole George Floyd thing, where it seemed like we turned a corner, and it's clear that we haven't. And it's
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 very
just
clear that we haven't.
I
it's
think
so clear, and it's just frustrating that we're still arguing we're arguing over this, where it's like, no, this has to get done. Let's get something done.
Can I ask a question though? Did defund the police really reduce the gains in the House for the Democrats, or kind of causes losses? Because the way I'm looking at the election is like there are so many different factors that came about. Yes, every Republican ad had a defund the police tone to it, but to me, I think there was like so many different factors. Like for example, in South Florida, Cubans voted Republican because they feared socialism, right?
Yeah,
That was kind of the driving piece. It wasn't defund the police. Like Florida doesn't really push for that at all, really. So it's just like,
I don't think it was. I just think that you have Democrats didn't really campaign on anything besides, oh, we have to stop Trump, who
yes,
didn't really fight up against anything that they were accused of. Like if you like, it's easy to counter things like defund the police by saying, no, this is what we want. But I would go back and really look exhaustively at those campaigns and say, okay, what did you say to counter this attack against you? And I think what you would find is that not a lot of people did that. That they weren't really reaching out besides saying, oh, we're the resistance. We're going to stand up against Trump. That's cool in 2018.
mhm.
But in 2020, you need a little more than that. You need to actually, argue for some of the policies that Joe Biden actually did put forth in his plan. Are those things that you stand for? What do you stand for?
I think Joe Biden has to kind of, I don't know if it's maybe he's, I don't know if maybe he's like waiting, I guess, until he's like in the White House to kind of like be more clear on his direction in some of his policies, which I can understand. But at the same time, it's really not that big. I think a lot of quote unquote socialists or whatever you want to call them issues aren't really, and it's funny to me because a lot of people view socialism as this like, this crazy thing, and it's really, it's really not. And I think we have to kind of start to make it clear what exactly we expect from these from the people that we elect. And I think sometimes
Mhm.
we let them get by because we're trying to, like Marcus said, we're just on some like, we have to get rid of Trump. Granted, yes, Trump needed to go, but
Mhm.
I said, I even said when they were elected, I'm like, this really great that we got this closure, that we know that we are moving on with the new president. But at the same time, it's like we're not, I don't expect anyone to take it easy on Joe Biden. Expect the same things. If you're asking for certain things, or you're expecting certain things, or that you're campaigning on certain policies that appeal to, your voters, then you have to do something about that. You have to act on this, like defund the police, whether you want to call it reimagine the police, new police, whatever you want to call it. The
Mhm.
fact remains is like people really just, you get tired of turning on the news and it's the same old shit, and it's the same old, and it's like, enough already. And that's really what it boils down to. It's like I think we're just all, and this year has been very devastating in terms of the pandemic and social justice and the election and the runoff and all this stuff. And regardless of how it is or however he wants to handle it, like things have to change. And I don't think it's fair for him, if this is his plan, if he's sort of like reneging from what he plans on doing. I think that that's very unfortunate, but I would hope that he would realize how divisive that may be.
When I see Joe Biden, I see an old centrist Democrat. Like he was never gonna be on board for any of these ideas. He, j- I, kn- this is the problem with the DNC. They have no directions. I think the inherent problem with the Democratic Party is the leadership. I think the fact that what's happening in Georgia is happening now, where it looks like Warnock is getting beat up by Kelly Loeffler, that shouldn't be happening like in general. And the fact that I think Democrats always look for a scapegoat. In 2010, they said it was Obamacare, but it was not Obamacare. They just ignored the fact that the Tea Party was a serious thing that they had to pay attention to, you know?
Yep.
Defund the police is not the reason why people lost the seat. They lost the seat because the DNC keep not doing the 50 state strategy that they're supposed to do. They do coast by coast campaigning, and so we lose everything, down ballot, down ticket, everything. And that's the inherent problem with the party, and it has no direction. Like, the party has no direction. Defund the police, come on. If you're smart enough, or a college educated, or even a high school graduated person, you can get the idea behind.
And it's been said enough times to where you can get it. Multiple people have come out and basically just laid it out for you, you know. And
it's like the the kneeling phenomenon. It's like,
I think you're giving high school grads too much credit. just to be fair, because I think if you look at one of the things that did come out of this election that we know of is that folks that weren't college educated were voted strongly in favor of Donald Trump. And that's across races, Hispanic, Black, white, whatever you are. The non-college degree voters, you know, were eating up whatever he was selling, whether that was socialism is coming, or whether that's defunding the police, whatever he was selling, they were eating it up. So I don't know if I want to put faith in them. Just to be fair.
My issue with Americans is that they pick and choose what kind of socialist policy they want and which one they think is great. Because if you take a history class, everybody gonna rave about, every history teacher is gonna rave about the Great New Deal, or whatever what was called.
Yeah, the New Deal.
That's probably one of the biggest socialist policy the world has ever seen. And nobody talks about it like, oh, that's a socialist policy. That's a government handout, but that's socialist policy. Like, so
you got to hang out with some if you hang out with some libertarians, they'll tell you that Social Security and Social Security and government healthcare are definitely socialist policies that they want to get rid of. But I can get your point, Leo. You are exactly right. We are kind of you are choosy on the things that we're okay with. Socialism in certain spots, and then other times it's like, oh, you're on your own.
I also feel like people are severely just ignorant when it comes to like just different forms of government. You know, we've been kind of brainwashed to think that every other form of government that exists across the world or in other countries is just like, oh my God, you know, whatever. And it's like, when you really break down socialism, it's like, and it's just funny to me, considering that a majority of the population in this country are not rich. It's amazing to me how so many people cape for capitalism, which is what we have. When if you look at like socialist policies, it's really just community based. It's just giving more to people. Like you live in this country. We want to give you more to live in this country. And because we've been brainwashed, it's like, oh no, that's not a good idea. I don't want no help. Like, you know, and it just makes sense to me. And I think the problem is the language. Maybe people are getting confused by the words that are being used or whatever the case may be. And you have to get past that. The fact remains is whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to dress it up as, is really just all groups into criminal justice reform. Like our criminal justice system needs to be changed. Like laws need to be changed, policies need to be changed, like minimum sentencing needs to go away. All this type of stuff, it all like it's in one pot. And that's the same thing with police reform. Like, it's also crazy to me how people have been conditioned to believe that if like a cop is supposed to be arresting someone for doing something bad, then like they can just kill him because like you did a bad thing. So it's like, that's not like, it's just people have to take the time, instead of just saying things and thinking things, like educate yourself, like read about it. If you're not sure what something means, if you're not sure what someone means by what they say, hold them accountable. Like, okay, what do you mean by it? And then if they, you know, people don't watch debates, they don't care about when people are explaining things, they just ignore it and say, I don't like that. But why don't you like it? Because it doesn't sound good. Well, what does it mean? I don't know. So, you know, it's just a lot of like ignorance. And I think also like with us, you know, when it comes to Democrats, we don't hold them accountable. You know, we elect them because we're told that they're for us. We're supposed to vote for them. And then it's like almost when they get into office, it's kind of like, well, you know, we got what we wanted, and that's, you know, it is what it is.
I see where you're coming from. I feel like it's, with Americans, it's really lost in translation. And I'm gonna keep coming back to this point because it's like, it's the idea that most Americans are indoctrinated to pull themselves up by the bootstrap, or they see a rich person, so they thinking like, yo, if I work hard enough, I'm going to be wealthy, I'm going to be rich. But nobody would sit down and tell a person, look, people don't get rich by working. Like, most people inherit wealth, or it's in capital. Their money is tied up in capital or investment or something like that. But an average person wouldn't understand me explaining that to them. They would think I'm just trying to like be a socialist to them. Yeah, and negative, because I'm selling them short. But we all can't be rich, so.
Also, don't underestimate how a lot of the rich are just born into their own families, which I think is another thing that just kind of gets overlooked. Like, a lot of the wealth is just inherited wealth, or wealth that's passed down from generation to generation. It's not a matter of people picking themselves up by the bootstraps, quote unquote. Although
that's what I've been saying. Yeah,
that's such a strong idea, though. I think it's, Carla, you said it a couple episodes. Like, there's this idea that's of personal responsibility that kind of undergirds so much of what we see in this country, where people just feel like they have to take responsibility for themselves, and they're responsible for how they operate and how they move throughout life, and they kind of expect that from everybody else. At least they put it out there, and because of that, like, you'll see that, they don't want, this is language like, we don't want the government helping us, or we shouldn't be giving out people shouldn't be getting handouts or anything like that, when it's self-defeating.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
No, I agree. And so Marcus had like a pretty good not theory, but he has like a topic down here about like how we're losing like local news. And I think that's the main reason why we're seeing like this more of a polarization in America. It's just because, we're only turning to like our national news sources, right?
Yeah.
So if you only watch like Fox News or OAN, you're going to have a very, very radical view of the country, of the world, right?
Facts.
And if you turn to like CNN, like I like CNN. I have CNN on right now, but like CNN, it's also a company. It has to make money, so it's just going to sensationalize like certain news segments or certain scenarios to get more eyeballs to it. So I think like the slow death of our local news media, like our local newspapers, or for example, it's kind of like causing that major polarization, and it's really sad.
I think it's even a scarier thing with local news too, is that, while newspapers are kind of faltering across the country, TV news networks, which were another way for local places to kind of hold elected officials, hold companies to hold them to a standard, basically be able to call them out on their bullshit. More and more of them have kind of been bought up by like one or two companies, and there's this kind of consolidation that's happened, wherein you're not going to learn about everything that's happening in an area, and that's only going to make this polarization issue even tougher to learn about, because instead of getting what's going on in your backyard, you're getting editorials from I forget what's the name of the company. It's going to annoy me, but yeah, there's basically a company that's buying up all of these stations, and you're getting this
Sinclair Broadcasting Group.
Sinclair, that's what it was.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Sinclair.
Yeah, it's companies like that that are just kind of buying up all these stations, and instead of us getting an actual real telling of what's going on, we're kind of getting their kind of corporatized idea of what's happening. It's not helping this polarization issue that we're going through.
Yeah, and this is also like a little bit off of a tangent here, but I currently live in Florida, and our governor is just super radical. And normally when you hear the word radical, you think like AOC or those type of people, but like this guy, he was recently caught trying to reduce our COVID numbers. Basically, he sent state troopers out after like a person to be fired.
Yeah, I saw that.
And like try to steal their documents because like he wanted to reduce like our official COVID count, which is why I don't leave the house. And then two, he also wanted to push to expand the standing ground law, which is already controversial. Where like if you see like a looter, whatever that means, that you have the right to shoot and kill that person. So. Absolutely radical ideas. This guy should be impeached or recalled, whatever you want to call it. But like, yeah, no, like real big thing in our local news whatsoever. And like, he's probably gonna get reelected in 2022. So it's just real frustrating,
And I think one of the reason that's been overlooked why Trump happened is for stations like Sinclair Broadcasting Group, which controls the news rights to 40% of the local news channel in the country, and they show to at least 200 million people in the country, and the study shows that they lean conservative. Like Sinclair Group is like a Republican group, so Republican-led group. So like that's one of the reasons why like they as Marcus said, they were moving away from like news that happened in your backyard to watching your local news, and it's straight national politics and stuff like that. And they get like scripts sent. I think John Oliver did a cover on the Sinclair group also.
He did.
They send scripts to each local news station that they have to read. So basically, it's not like independently owned or those little mom and pop TV companies anymore in those local areas. So I mean, that's a lot of like exposed marketing.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, I think there are federal laws around that. Like one company could only buy up so many. They can't monopolize the local news stations. There's a federal law blocking that, but I'm sure like the companies are trying to chip away at that law. But yeah, there is like encouraging like more conservative viewpoint of our local news, which is actually kind of scary now.
Very.
Let's move on to Biden's transition. Now, we talked about that same call of civil rights leaders with President-elect Biden. Let me put some respect on
There
this
you
name.
go.
Oh, man.
This guy. You
I know.
think you're running for Republican Congress in a couple of years, buddy?
Well, I am in Florida. So
It's
might
true.
as well.
I forgot.
So President-elect Biden, again, the same call with the civil rights leaders that got leaked. Earlier in that call, the civil rights leaders were really pushing for Marsha Fudge, she's a congresswoman out of Ohio, to be the agricultural secretary. Even James, James Clyburn, the Joe Biden kingmaker, if you will, he was also pushing for Marsha Fudge to be the agriculture secretary. And the reason for this is because there is a lot of old school racism when it comes to our Black farmers. I think there's some stat that like 0.2% of like USDA agricultural loans go to Black farmers. It is the New York Times Daily did an amazing podcast on this one. It is super sad and depressing where like just like these Black farmers, if they're in a county in the deep South and that county is run by like, white people, they're not going to get any like help whatsoever from the federal government.
That's why it's funny to me when people say, "Oh my gosh, like people make everything about race," and it's like, you know, everything.
It is.
Everything is.
Everything is, unfortunately.
You know, and it's unfortunate because a lot of people don't even like. I feel like a lot of people don't even think about that, or they don't even care about that, because like nobody, unless you, I guess, live in like a rural area or whatever, or you keep up with stuff. Like a lot of people don't even consider farmers during this time. Like, and that's why I say like with the New Deal and like this, the whole thing with like, oh, how change for the environment is like not necessary, or it seems like it's, you know, there's an argument on each side of like, do we need it or do we not need it? And it's like, we need it because it's like farmers, first of all, farmers are already going through a hard time. Like they're having like really hard harvest seasons and stuff. And then like with COVID and everything.
There's also Trump's trade war with China. That heavily, no one talks about that. We gave a lot of money to farmers. So
I think when you're talking about maybe the devastation that farmers, especially Black farmers, are experiencing, it's definitely a much needed conversation. And so I feel that's something that needs to be considered when considering who would head that department.
Right.
I think one of the most shocking thing is that we knew that we needed somebody Black to be in USDA because the USDA have a tendency to focus on like the Midwest states, you know, like the Ohio's, so the southern farmers who happen to be Black, you know, they get looked over. And I think it's pretty shocking that Biden transition team insulted Marsha Fudge this bad, because he said 1 month ago.
Well, you gotta tell the listeners how like they insulted Marsha Fudge. You gotta like.
Yes, I'm gonna explain.
All right.
So exactly 1 month ago, Marsha Fudge said, "As this country becomes more diverse, we're gonna have to stop looking at only certain agencies as those that people like me fit in. You know, it's always we want a Black person in labor or HUD." And then a month later, you're gonna put her in that same position that she said, like, this is all that we get now.
Are we surprised?
To play devil's advocate, shouldn't she have just said no if she truly felt that way?
I mean, Marsha
Yes.
Ford's been in government forever, so I think if she get called for a higher service, she's gonna take it to serve her country. I'm just defending Black women 2020, man.
I think Marcus is making a good point. Yeah, but at the same time, it's because I think, I think we keep getting picked for these roles because we keep taking these roles. Like, if she felt that strongly about it and was like, okay, we keep getting looked over for other positions, but we keep like getting these same positions, I would think, whatever, I would think that you're only further pushing that agenda by continuing to fill these roles. Because
Right.
it's, even though I like genuinely dislike Ben Carson, it's just like Ben Carson had no right, he had no place in his position anyway.
Mhm.
But it's like, him being in the position only opens the door for us to continue to fill that position with someone that looks like him. So once he leaves, it's like, okay, let's just get another Black person to fill that role. Okay, when they leave, and so it's like we're not allowing ourselves to be able to be considered for other roles because we kind of like settle. So I think if she, like she said, if she felt that strongly about it, I think she should have turned it down.
And another thing too is, like Carson wasn't really qualified for, the HUD role. Like Fudge really wasn't qualified for the HUD role either. She's someone who spent her entire career, spent on agricultural issues really.
On agricultural
really
issues,
know.
Which makes another valid point, because it's like, they're not even qualified, or that's not even their lane. Like I've continued to say, I use Ben Carson as an example because I feel like he's a perfect example. He was a neurosurgeon.
Yeah.
He completed
he's famous.
He was a famous neurosurgeon. He separated two conjoined twins. Like I thought, when I heard he got, picked for HUD, I'm like, that's so far. I would have liked to see him maybe in like another, like a health role or, something or whatever. But to
CDC,
have him,
human health and human services.
Right.
There's urban.
Something
There's
health-based.
urban. There's urban in the. I was saying there's urban in the word HUD, and that's why I feel like they keep picking us for the position.
But you see what happens, when, like, I feel like him filling that role, and him not being qualified had negative consequences. So we keep, pitting, so it's bad enough that we're only occupying these spaces, but it's like, we're not even qualified for them. So it's like, you're not even considering me for what I'm good for. Like, so if like, I can't help but to think, and despite how I feel about him, I can't help but to think like, it's like, maybe Ben Carson would have been he could have had a different, impact if he was in a role that better suited what he had spent a bulk of his life doing. Like I may have not been so critical of Ben Carson if he was actually in, a role like we just did, like CDC, or whatever, something health-based, because maybe it would have been like, he knows what he's talking about. He can actually do something. And I just feel like it was a huge misstep. So I'm hoping maybe that won't continue to be the pattern. But
do you guys think that are you familiar at all with the opportunity zones?
I'm not too familiar.
Somewhat.
Is that something? Did that originate out of HUD, or did that come from an entirely different government body? I'm not sure. I'm trying to figure out, like, like what would HUD have had I know that they're kind of involved in kind of community reinvestment, so it seems very like a HUD kind of proposal, but I'm not sure if he had any effect in that role. And it's just curious that, again, getting back to Carly's point, that he wasn't really qualified for it. If he didn't have any impact on that happening, then it's like, what did you really do? In these 4 years in that role, what did you really add to it? It's just kind of like a bill.
To the White House.
Okay, then yeah, I don't really know like what you get from having people that aren't qualified for a role, or have any kind of like experience that would suggest they'd be good in that role. What good is having them there?
The impact that has is on everyday people,
right?
Because they're the ones that suffer. Ben Carson isn't suffering; he's doing a job, and he's fine. And the people that his policies are like his, the things that he's in charge of in his role, it affects the everyday people, which it continues to be my, my call. It's just like, when are we gonna realize that it's not about them? It's about, like Betsy DeVoe, same shit. It's not.
That's what I was about to say.
Her situation she's gonna leave this office completely unchanged. She's gonna go back to her regular life or go on to do something else. Meanwhile,
She's a billionaire.
Yeah, like meanwhile, people who are in school, college students, whatever the case may be, have been severely impacted by her policies, and like she's gonna be like whatever. And same thing with Ben Carson. Like there are people who are genuinely affected by his, his role or his, incompetence in his role, which he is.
Yeah.
And they suffer. He doesn't suffer, they suffer.
So let me just say this. I do agree with Marcus 100% that Marshall Fudge should have rejected it. I want to say, and please correct me if I'm wrong, the governor of New Mexico, I think she wanted the Health and Human Services Secretary job, and they wanted to offer her the Interior role, and she turned it down.
Right.
And the Biden camp just moved on. You know what I mean? So like,
Could have done the same thing.
Yeah, Marcia Fudge, she's been in Congress forever. Yes, Democrats hold the House. She could have just said no out of principle. But let me just finish off this one topic though. So on that same call, the civil rights leaders specifically did not want Tom Vilsack to lead the agriculture department. Part of that was because Tom Vilsack, when he was Obama's agriculture secretary for all 8 years of his term, he fired Shirley Sherrod. Yeah. I don't know if you guys remember Shirley Sherrod.
Yes, sir.
Civil rights legend, right?
Civil rights legend. But years ago, and under the Obama administration, she was speaking to Black farmers. I forgot what she said, but you know how like Black people talk to other Black people like super casually and stuff like that? Well, basically like Breitbart got a hold of her talking to other Black people like at a conference or something like that. Something very small, nothing like too formal like that.
It was called Acorn, right?
I think it was called Acorn.
I think it was called Acorn. But yeah, you continue. Don't mean to interrupt.
No. Please fill in the gaps because I can't. I'm just going off of memory, off like years ago, right? So Breitbart got a hold of it, spliced up the video, and made it sound like she was like spewing hate towards white people. No, she was simply just saying there is racism. And basically, the Obama administration, which again I try not to criticize because first Black president, moved very quickly and swiftly to have her fired or removed from that role. Tom Vilsack was secretary. He had her fired. A lot of civil rights leaders were against that.
I don't think Shirley Sherrod was handled so poorly that everybody ended up apologizing to her, even Tom Vilsack. But again, I think with the Obama White House, like they were moving at such a rate that they were trying to not seem too radical and try to stop any little leaks and stuff, just like if you watch the whole video that Jeremiah Wright sermon, if you look at the video in context, it's the same thing that happened to Shirley Sherrod happened to Jeremiah Wright, and Obama had to cut him off.
Mm-hmm. Now this is like completely off topic, like way left field, but Warnock, the guy that's running in Georgia for the Senate seat, they're doing the exact same thing to him because he's a pastor at Ebenezer Church, which is the same church that Martin Luther King preached at when he was alive. Exact same thing. Splices of him preaching to Black people to make him seem like he's spewing hate towards white people.
It's actually, first of all, the commercials that are going on between the two of them are like ridiculous. They're really trying to paint him as like this radical who's just like completely anti like America or whatever, blah blah blah. But he's, that's not what it is. And it's like a tactic to kind of like, I think it's just to to kind of like stray away from like what Kelly Loeffler.
It's to scare white people. That's all it is.
That's it.
It's to scare white people.
That's the same thing Brian Kemp did.
It's the same thing. Like instead of focusing on what these two white senators have been doing, you're trying to paint this person out to be, something that he's not. But I'm not surprised. Are we surprised? No.
Oh yeah,
what's the counter though? Like, where's the Democratic counter to all this? Like, because again, like these attacks are going to keep coming.
But I think you could take like the high road.
If you're playing football and you go to tackle someone high, you're going to get trucked. All right. At some point in time, we have to kind of adapt to what the
Yeah.
Republicans do and get in the mud with them, right? You're there for a reason. You have to their tactics, while we may frown upon them or
Georgia,
wave our fingers, they work. All right, we have to get dirty like them in order to kind of win these kind of elections. If they want to sling mud on on Warnock by using doctored clips, Kelly Loeffler was investigated for insider trading.
So
David Perdue was out here selling secrets or selling off stocks when he was getting information about COVID that nobody else had.
Mm-hmm.
he knew about it before.
They both are insider traders.
So I'll say this though. I'll say this. I'll be a devil's advocate to Marcus's devil's advocate here. I would say I'll argue the Democrats are fighting back, but I think the main issue is that people don't care. And here's my thing though, right? Because I want to go back to when Joe Biden had that phone call with the civil rights leaders, and he was saying, defund the police is killing us. Do you know how much crazy shit we just went through in 2020? We went through COVID. Trump's been doing a lot of crazy shit. I think Trump almost invaded Iran. Like, there was a lot of crazy stuff that happened in 2020 alone with the presidency. And you mean to tell me that what resonated with voters the most was Black people calling for police reform?
Yeah.
like you gotta stop and think about, like, if that's what people only cared about the most,
But
then
we
like
have
they won't
learned-
care about corruption and shit like
one
that.
thing
You know?
that I've learned, especially, and I would hope everyone else did, is like people don't care about what's important. They don't care about what's at stake. They don't care about what they may lose, how that would affect them. It's like they're just more concerned with putting someone that kind of like paints, or just kind of like, I guess, aligns with who they see themselves as, and I don't want to say it, but it's racist. That's the word. That's what it is. It's like,
That's what it is. Yeah.
I'm just gonna call a spade a spade. It's what it is. They're more focused on, well, this person is racist and they allow me to be racist, and so I'm good with that. It doesn't matter if this person's trying to take away my livelihood, my house, the way I feed my family, my health insurance. It doesn't matter to them. And so I feel like we have to get past this idea that if we keep coming, like if you know that I'm not saying like lies, and I'm not saying lie or whatever, because they're gonna do it anyway, but it's like if you see that this person is just making things up, trying to paint you out to be a horrible person, just completely falsifying your record, just making up things to prove a point, you need to go ahead and do the same thing, because it's been working for them. And it continues to work for them, especially in Georgia. Like, come on now, realistically speaking, like, if that's what's working, I understand we're trying to be fact-based, or like, like we're going through a pandemic, like I really want to help or whatever. That's cool. That's fine. That's yeah, whatever. Do that when you get there, but you have to get there first. Yep. And I feel like we don't fight as hard to get to where we're going like they do. Like, they'll step over anybody, they'll throw anybody under the bus, they'll do whatever they have to do to fill the roles that they're trying to fill, or to put people in the places that they want to put them in. But when it comes to us, it's like, well, no, we're just going to tell you what we want to do, and we're going to tell you how we're going to do it, and we're going to tell you when we're going to do it, and it's like people are looking at you like, okay.
Well, all right. So, like, to defend the Democrats here, and I can't believe I'm doing this, but John Ossoff has actually been on the attack pretty aggressively against like his opponent. He's calling his opponent a crook. He's highlighting all the insider trading deals, even though like I forget blank on the senator's name right now.
David Perdue.
David Perdue, like, even though he was like not found guilty by the Justice Department, which to me doesn't mean anything, but still, he's still pointing out the corruption. He's like pointing out the hypocrisy of it all. Yep. Just that Republicans collectively, both senators, are just joining forces and saying this Black man is going to be public enemy number one.
Number one, yep.
And like it kind of like highlights America as a whole, where like we're still holding on to like these racial views from the past, where it's like, we can't have this Black guy be like radical. We can't have this Black guy be
Black man in itself. It's not like it's almost as like being a Black man is just a threat in itself. That's literally
right.
It's man. You have to understand, like, because we're all. This is the funniest part to me. Everyone's so religious when it comes to abortions and all
don't get me started on that
and stuff like this, but then you get a man that's in the church, like he's in the church, and it's like, we don't want that.
No, it's like, that's not who we wanted.
That's not, we wanted not that one. So it's like, then you start to look at it, and that's what it boils down to. It's, you have this And it's like, even I was watching the debate, I was watching the Georgia Senator debate between Kelly and Raphael, and she was completely evasive to all the questions. She just kept calling him a radical, and
Yeah, like every other
and
word, she just said
that was
radical.
it. And then and you have to understand, she knew exactly what she was doing because she knew who she was appealing to. And
Right.
you say certain words, they're like dog whistle words. You say certain, and this is like the classic age-old Southern strategy, from our good old former President Richard Nixon. It's just, you say certain words that ignite. Like, you don't have to say, "Oh, this big black guy." You can say radical, and it's gonna mean the same thing to those
Right.
people because they're speaking. Like, it's in code, basically.
It's like you're
And
substituting an N word for something else,
basically,
basically.
Yeah.
and it's like, it
Yeah.
means the same thing in their eyes, and she knows that. And it's like, I just feel like we have to be more aware of that. But it's like, at the same time, at this point, all you can do is, if you live in Georgia, is go out for the election. But then it's like, I can't help but to think, like, the people that she's appealing to, are they going to outnumber the people that he's appealing to? And that may be the case, because it doesn't really seem like the people in Georgia are too upset about what their two senators have been up to. Like, they have
Right.
literally made money off of your suffering,
Literally.
and you're like,
Right?
that's fine, and they're white. I'm okay with that. Like, it's
Right.
like, it's fine if a white person does it to me. If a white person F's me over, I'm cool with that.
Right.
But,
Right.
it's more important, I guess, for them. It's more important, like, we just want to keep it white than actually put forth. Like, people are struggling. Like, people can't, like, pay their rent. They can't feed their families. Like, they are going through a tough time, and the people that are supposed to help you, the people that you elected to help you, are profiting off of your struggle, and that is
Yes.
absolutely fine. And then that's when you start to paint the picture of exactly who we're talking about, and that's just a bunch of uneducated, ignorant, racist, conservative, whatever the case may be, group of people that just want to keep old.
Basket of deplorables.
Yes.
It's like, if it, in their mind, it's like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And to them, it's not broken. So I don't think they're interested in fixing it. And so I think, ultimately, I don't know. Like I said, I've said it again. I'll say it again and again and again. I don't have too much confidence. I just have to wait and see. But I don't really think it's going to go the way that we hope it's going to go.
Agreed, 100%. And we went on off on a huge tangent. It was a great tangent. Let's talk about Biden transition team. All right, so Joe Biden did say, let's big up Joe Biden for a second. I've been tearing him down a lot. He's actually trying. I have been tearing him down a lot. But anyways, like, let's big him up a little bit. He did say he was going to have the most diverse cabinet in history. I do think he's well on track to do that. For example, Lloyd Austin, he is going to be, if approved, he's going to be the first Black defense secretary. I'm pretty happy about that. Lloyd Austin is a general. He's going to need a waiver from Congress in order to do that. I think Tammy Duckworth said that she's not going to vote for the waiver, but she's going to vote to install him for some principle. I don't know. That's what she's for. And so Lloyd Austin is going to be the first Black defense secretary. I'm all for that. Like, I'm really happy about that. I'm an Army brat, and what people don't kind of realize is how diverse our nation's military really is. Yeah. It's very, very diverse. You could go to some bases, there are Black bases, so you can, like, see the diversity of the military. So to see someone like Lloyd Austin make it to the pinnacle head of the department, it's really inspirational.
I will say, one thing about Joe Biden's cabinet that I'll give him credit for is representation. A lot of people tend to overlook how important representation is. And it's not a small thing. It's like, it is inspirational, that it's unfortunate that, we still hear the words first in 2020, like, first Black or first woman. It's, it's kind of sad, but at the same time, it's like, we have a all woman communications team.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting some, minority people in these, these large roles. They're like heading these major functions, departments in our our government. But it's no short thing in the sense that it's opening, maybe hopefully opening the door for other people to, say, like, okay, hey, we never considered doing this before, but now that we're doing it now, because I can't help but to think, like, okay, Obama was our first Black president, maybe down the line we'll have another Black president. And who knows if, Obama wasn't the president when he became the president, when we would see that again. So I think representation, if anything, is a good thing, because I guess for me, it encourages other people that look like us, like, other women, other, minorities, to keep striving for these, like, it's like, you can get there if you really wanted to.
Yeah.
Maybe you can, maybe not, I don't know. But it's like, at least you see someone that looks like you, and it gives you kind of like a breath of fresh air, like a sigh of relief. Like, okay, if they did it, maybe I can do it. And I think that's what we need. We need more people to say, I want to go for these big roles, because we need people, we need more diversity in these, these historically all white spaces.
Sounds like you're telling a bunch of people to stop being SoundCloud rappers, which I'm also in agreement with. But I just want to, not to just distract from your point, Carl, because I think it's true. But going back to the waiver thing, do you think that we need to have a? So I think he needs the waiver because they're supposed to be like a civilian. They want to have civilians in charge of these departments. Do you think that that's a big deal? I know we just waived it for Jim Mattis. Do you think it matters that we have it now for him, for Lloyd Austin, or is this like a nothing issue?
So let me just to clarify. So like the waiver is basically like you need to be out of the military for a certain period of time to serve as Secretary of Defense. So the Secretary of Defense
7 years or something.
7 years, I think. You have to be strictly a civilian because it's strictly a civilian role, right? It's supposed to be that separation of powers between the military and the executive branch. Right. Now, do I think it's a big deal? No. But I am going to have my eyes on this because the Senate pretty much voted nearly unanimously
for Mattis, right?
For James Mattis. So I want to see that exact same thing happen for Lloyd Austin. If that doesn't happen, like something's up there.
There's already been a few Democrats that have come out against him. So I'm like, what's going on here? They didn't. I don't remember all of this, people standing up against Mattis. So it's like, it's weird that they're doing this for Austin. I know there's some questions about his qualifications or that he's not like a superstar, quote unquote, like Mattis was, but it just seems weird that, that he's not getting the same treatment, despite, reaching the ranks that he did and being retired for, I think, 3 or 4 years now. It seems like this shouldn't be an issue, but it could maybe become one.
Yeah, I mean, like, even if you look at Lloyd Austin's resume, like, he kind of oversaw the troop withdrawal in Iraq. That's exactly what we want right now. Right. So, like, his resume is there. It's not easy to be a general. It takes a lot of work, a lot of politics, and a lot of education to get up to that level. So
a lot of time. Yeah, like again, you're in the military for that long to get to that point. I mean, he was leading Central Command, I think, up until under Obama, right? He was in there until 2016, 2017, I want to say.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So I think, to get to that point and then, like, this is the only obvious next step for him. So I think to just kind of be denied that, which might happen. I hope it doesn't, but weird shit happens in Washington, man. So, we'll see.
Yeah, no, we'll see. So, like, again, like, me personally seeing like a Black guy as defense secretary definitely means a lot.
Yeah.
If we're talking about like people who were secretaries in like the wrong roles, I would highlight Colin Powell as our Secretary of State under George Bush. Right. He probably should have been our first Black Secretary of Defense. But I don't want to go off on a separate tangent. No.
I remember reading. I was like, wait, I saw the first, for Lloyd Austin. I was like, wait, wasn't Colin Powell that role? And no, he wasn't. But it's
no.
weird. It's weird how that goes.
Yeah, it makes no sense. So let's just continue down here. Susan Rice. We did talk about Susan Rice, I think, on last podcast, or 2 episodes ago. She does have a job now. She's going to be the domestic advisor to Joe Biden. So congrats to Susan Rice there.
Another role she doesn't really have. Another person who is kind of miscast, I would think. This is someone with foreign policy experience now handling domestic policy. It seems kind of weird, but
it does seem kind of weird.
It's good to have her there, though. I mean, she's clearly qualified to have this kind of role. It's just in a world where her experience doesn't really align. But good for her to be back in the game.
Yeah, it seems like they're very scared to have her go through the confirmation process, which to me, like the whole Benghazi thing, if you want to talk about like, blowing an investigation out of proportion, that was one. We spent millions of dollars on this investigation to just turn out it was just like red tape for the government that caused the whole incident. So
really
like,
just to dissuade. It was really just an anti-Clinton crusade, I thought, because they were worried about her running in
yes,
2016, so they wanted to have something in her. They just wanted to have that in people's ideas, people's minds when election time came. Like, oh, wasn't she at the center of that whole investigation we did for several years and wasted millions of dollars on? I
yes,
would want to vote her in for president. So I think that was kind of the
yes.
strategy. But either way, Susan Rice got dragged through that as well, unfortunately.
She did. And it was crazy to think about, like, that is a government funded, taxpayer funded, so our tax dollars paid for an anti-Clinton campaign. or
This is something the Democrats should keep in mind when we're running against Republicans, is that when they're in charge, they're using our taxpayer dollars to go golf, to run witch hunts for no reason, and they're
yes.
just wasting our money. All right, do you really and giving tax cuts to corporations in the term for like trillions of dollars? Is this who you want to pass the sticks to, America? This is how Democrats need to start campaigning. But I don't want to go there. Let's continue.
Yeah, no, we gotta do the name call, and it seems to work. It seems to stick with people. I agree with you, Marcus. We just gotta come up with some crazy names and start name calling here.
We're just gonna take over the DNC. That's the next thing. Liberalish
That
and the
should be the
DNC.
goal.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I like that idea. Pete Buttigieg, he's been like pretty aggressive in asking the Biden transition team for a role.
Mhm.
I think the Biden transition team, it was rumored that they were going to offer him the VA spot. He said no to that. He wanted the UN the ambassador to the UN role. That was obviously offered to someone else. So he might get the ambassador to China role. I don't know if that's official yet, but that's what the latest rumors are as of right now.
I actually have a new one for
Oh,
just read a couple hours ago that he might be the secretary for transportation
Transportation, yep.
instead of
I don't think
our boy
he's
Ron.
qualified for none of this.
He's not.
he's not.
He was a good ambassador to have on Fox, but still.
Mayor, a small town. I think there's more people that live on my block, my street, than live in Pete Buttigieg's town or city that he's the mayor of.
Don't disrespect South Bend, the home of University of Notre Dame.
I've never heard somebody say I'm going to take a vacation in South Bend.
Because nobody goes to Indiana for vacation.
So this is off on another complete tangent, but the one thing I did like about Amy Klobuchar during when she was running for president was that she absolutely hated Pete Buttigieg.
Because she knew it doesn't belong there. Like, why are you here, sir?
No.
She, like, her hatred towards this guy, I don't know what he said to her or about her, but she had a vendetta against him. She emphasized he was a local official. She kept throwing that term around there. I don't know.
She did call him a local official a couple times.
She did, like, a lot. Like, she emphasized this man is a local official. He's nothing special about this guy. But again, that was off on a tangent. And then speaking of, like,
that was a beautiful tangent.
Thank you, Ryan. We're gonna have you on more often now because of that. Speaking of the head of DNC, James Clyburn, again, Joe Biden kingmaker, he wants Jamie Harrison to be the head of the DNC. So we'll see who Joe Biden decides to go with there. And I think, Marcus, you predicted that the senator out of Alabama,
Doug Jones
was going to be the attorney general. I did see his name is like appearing now, appearing like here and there for that specific role. So you might be right on that one.
I should have bet on it. I feel very good about that one.
Oh, betting on politics is a nasty thing, man. But
it's for the it's for the degenerates, man. If you're betting on politics, you're a degenerate.
Marcus, we're going to talk offline about this. So anyways, let's go to our final segment here. Let's just go through a couple of headlines. And then let's talk about pardons. So America's mayor, I'm going to keep using this term because everyone called Rudy Giuliani America's mayor. So he's America's mayor.
That was centuries ago at this point.
I don't care. He's America's mayor.
Coming out of his head in the middle of interviews, pre-ooze.
So basically, it is rumored that he asked Trump for a pardon. He's denying it, but there's rumors that he asked for one. He also had COVID. He got the best government care for it. He's recovering now. And while he was testifying in Michigan to overturn the election results there, allegedly he did farted while on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, jeez. Jeez,
So,
Rudy.
It is a very funny video. I do recommend you guys go look it up.
He's of that age where it's just not as controllable as it once is. So, you have to give him a pass. He's
No.
We're not doing that. No,
No,
we're
no,
not
no.
going high anymore. All right.
No. I've saw like a lot of like YouTube
Old
videos
nasty
about
man.
this
This is
guy.
reality.
He is a nasty old man. Like, have you seen like him in a handkerchief
Oh my
videos that were
God,
circulating around?
grow up. That was so
Nasty.
disgusting. And especially considering like I can't even tell you, and it's funny, and I can't. And if he can do that, like knowing that like there's cameras, imagine like how bad it is behind camera, like how nasty.
Right.
No one's looking. Like that's just he's and it's funny because after that whole situation with the drip and everything or whatever, I was like, he's gonna get COVID if he hasn't had it already.
Oh, for sure.
And
No, for sure. Like you can just look at him and be like, this guy's gonna get COVID. Like it's just a matter of time before we see the headline.
But I think it's kind of funny, isn't like Trump basically pardoning everyone except
Yes.
what's his name? Is it he's pardoning everyone except the person that actually went to jail for him. What's his name?
I thought it's not Roger Stone, right?
Oh, is it Michael Cohen?
Oh no. Michael Cohen's on the blacklist. No,
Yeah, he hates Michael Cohen.
Plus,
Papadopoulos, George Papadopoulos, I think his name was, or something like that.
You sure it wasn't Cohen, or I don't know? Did
No,
Cohen even go to jail?
I just think
Cohen's in jail, but first I think he's
it's
in jail for his
funny
own things.
how I'm interested to see, or I don't know, I haven't really been keeping up with it, but I know Trump is not going to pardon him, but I can only imagine how infuriating that must be, considering everything that he had to go through, and then he ended up going to jail, and it's like this man just continues to kick you like while you're down. So
100%.
The Chris Christie personality, man.
like just blind loyalty. And then
Chris Christie's a legend, man. Don't make fun of him.
He's not a legend.
My man took the state helicopter to go to his kid's game, and people loved him. Like that's your tax dollars.
That's South Jersey. You had nothing to do with that.
My man shut down a bridge.
Those are the physical responsibility. That's the party of the physical responsibility.
Right. Didn't he also shut down a beach so he can just take his family out there?
Yes.
He shut down the beaches, and then he got someone took a picture of it
because he got mad at somebody.
Yep, got mad at a mayor who wouldn't endorse him for governor, so he shut down the bridges to create traffic.
My man is a living legend.
He's horrible.
He's disgusting. Right?
He's not a good guy. I'm just only joking about him. All right, so moving down headlines. The House did pass a bill to decriminalize marijuana at the federal level. Of course, this was mostly on party lines. The Democrats in the House voted overwhelmingly for it. However, it is expected to be dead on arrival in the Senate. Now, there's a Republican opposition to this bill. It's all BS, but I'm going to do my job and tell you what their opposition is. They're saying, one, it's a waste of time. There's other more important things to do. Why can't Congress do more than one thing simultaneously? I don't know. But they're calling it a distraction. They're saying it could lead to more impaired driving, etc. So Republicans aren't for it, even though we talked about in prior podcasts that there's bipartisan support for it.
It's actually funny to me because I feel like you would save we would actually save it's a two-part thing. With the marijuana thing. One, you would be making money because you're opening a new industry, essentially.
Yes.
That's something where you can get revenue from through taxes and everything. And then people can, as much as they invest in other things, they can invest in that. Two, it's just costly to house prisoners. And it's like, just think of how much money you would be getting back if you were only housing people for like really serious offenses. Like, I think so that's the only reason why I'm like a little shocked that I was always kind of like, maybe it would get some pushback once it got that far. But I was also kind of like, well, if they looked at it like through a capitalistic or like a money move type of thing, then it would make more sense. But
I don't know. Sell to the Christian base.
Huh?
It's hard to sell to the Christian base back home.
Yeah, like I don't know, and I think, and it's funny to me because we're always talking about how, the government's always talking about well, we don't have money for this and we don't have money for this, but then it's like when the opportunity presents itself for you to either make money or get back some of the money that you're continuously putting out, it's kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think this is a separate podcast. I think there's a very deeper, darker reason why behind it. I don't know if prisons are necessarily bleeding money as much as you would like, and the reason why is that slavery does still exist in the United States. The loophole is actually through the prison.
Yep.
So private corporations can make money off the prisons. There's also the private prisons as well, and even in a public prison, there's private services that the prisoners have to pay for and use within that prison that they're making a lot of money off of. I think it's just easier for a government to put someone in jail as opposed to actually investing in that person, making sure they have like a job, a house, or something like that. So,
That would be
and there's also racism too, like sprinkle racism on top of it. There's also that as well. So,
Start with racism and just go from there.
You're right, Marcus.
honestly,
I apologize.
I feel like racism is the onion. Like, it's like the core is racism, and then everything else is just, it's gonna lead you right back to where you're going. Like, everything
Yes.
is all leading back
Yeah.
to racism. It's really what it is. And again, everyone always wants to say, why is everything about race? Why is everything about, because
Hey, that's where it all began, right?
Because of you
Like,
guys.
you know.
Because of you white people who won't get over it.
But it's funny to me because, again, this is another example of how much information is readily available on the prison industrial complex, mass incarceration, whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
And yet we still think that, oh, prisons just exist because people do bad things. Like, it's not that people do bad things. How about we start to say, what doesn't the government do, or what doesn't the government provide the everyday person that leads them down this path where it's like, I have to commit crimes, I have to rob, I have to sell drugs, I have to do this, I have to do that in order to feed my family. It's really just as simple as that.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, back in 1968, the government did a whole commission on that, and they have all the answers for it. And the defund the police movement, I know we kind of like beat that topic to that a little bit, but the whole purpose of that is just like to invest in other government services to prevent further crime or help reduce other crime. So
because that's really what it is. Investing in sending people to prison, putting people on, like, just giving people any sort of punishment is not what's going to lower crime rates. It's not going to lower the prison number. What's going to change, if anything, is reinvesting in communities that you deem criminal. Like, everyone wants to talk about urban communities and how it's just a cesspool of crime and drugs and, unmotivated people who are just lazy and everything. But it's like there's a lack of resources. And if we took the money from prisons, or the money that we funnel through prisons, and reinvest them into actual programs, we may find there's been several studies that will say that that's really where the work needs to be, is giving people more of an incentive to want to do the right thing, or to want to,
you are 1,000% right. Like, economically, it does make sense. Politically, I don't know if it does, right? And the reason why is like a lot of these prisons, like at least state prisons, are based in like rural parts of the state, and they're there for a reason. They're there to provide jobs for that rural area. So like, I think a lot of it is just political, which is why they're not focusing too much on that. Because if you want to get the suburban or rural vote, you're not going to pay attention to the urban vote whatsoever, and that's like the unfortunate thing about it as well. But speaking of criminal justice, America's top cop, William Barr, is set to resign. I think this was after we kind of found out that Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's surviving son, is under investigation by the federal government. And President Trump wanted this to be known to the public before the election. And William Barr is like, no, I can't do this. I'm surprised he stood on this hill. And he's resigning now because of that. I'm assuming he's resigning because of that. Let me just clarify that.
It's nuts that this is like, if you think of all the things Bill Barr has done in service of Trump, like this is the thing that broke the straw, right? Like this is like he couldn't go this far. Like I don't know. Like it's good that he's leaving, but it's nuts that that he was kind of pushed this far to act this way. I don't know.
Yeah, Marcus,
right?
that was the thing like that doesn't make sense to me because William Barr was ride or die Trump.
He was
So and like this was the
unapologetically.
hill.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
you're
Hunter
right.
Biden's like that's the last bar. That's what you're not gonna break. What's going on there?
Yeah, no, I think weren't like was the Justice Department even considering like looking into like the past administration to like investigate
Yeah,
them?
yeah. And Trump
I
didn't like that. He didn't launch a full investigation into that.
I, I don't know. I, I don't know.
So good riddance.
Yeah, goodbye, good riddance,
The
man.
country is in better shape. With
Yeah.
Bob, it's only for a month. We're better. Actually, shoot, I don't even know if we're better off because Trump can name someone to be the acting AG, and they can
Yeah,
do all
he
sorts of
already
crazy
did.
shit,
Here
right?
it is.
Oh dear. So yeah, we
Oh,
can
sheesh.
we
It's
can
hold
wind
on,
up
hold
being in trouble because of it.
it is going to be Deputy Attorney General Jeff Rosen will be filling in for like it's funny because I said to someone the other day it's becoming like internships at this point. Like he's firing people to be in these roles for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and it's like you're about to leave too. So I understand, Trump is I'm starting to get the idea that he's a very emotional person. Like once you do something to him he doesn't like, you're out of here. I get that. But
Mhm.
considering that you should be focused on packing your stuff and getting out, like it doesn't make any sense to me why that's your focus. Like you're leaving too. Like you're getting fired. You're firing people and you're, firing, hiring, and I just can't help but to wonder to the people that he calls. It's like they don't say like why.
Not just that, like we're still in the middle of this pandemic. I know the vaccines just went out today from Pfizer, but 300,000 people have died of this thing. What the hell are you doing? That you're over here catching feelings because people won't do your bidding.
Yeah.
For an
Yeah.
election, like get it together, man. Grow the fuck up.
Yeah, I don't get it either. But hey, that's our president,
Not
and
anymore.
not anymore.
Who's
All right.
president?
And so I just want to go to our last topic. I know we're running a little bit over, but let's talk about Congress for a little bit. So there is supposed to be like a COVID stimulus package that's coming out. There is a group of centrist senators that are pushing for like a $900 billion COVID stimulus package.
Thank you, Susan Collins.
Season college. I'm going to go through the storyline. I'm going to have to ask you a question to you, Marcus.
Yeah.
But basically, what these group of centrist senators is they're dividing up this $900 billion package. About $750 billion of it is going to go towards boosting education, the vaccine distribution, transportation, and other funding that hasn't really been specified. And then $160 billion is going to go towards state and local government aid, and also provide short-term liability shields for employers. Now, me personally, I don't think employers should receive any liability protections if they're not providing the right protections for their employees. I do think they should be fair game, but I'm willing to hear another side of the argument for it. Maybe I'm missing something. But Marcus, the question I wanted to ask you is: Joe Manchin the de facto Senate Minority Leader now?
I'm afraid he is. Like, does it get any more centrist than Joe Manchin right now? I think he's going to
No.
I think he's going to be the guy that is kind of he's going to do Joe Biden's bidding and standing up against that the radical left.
Yes.
Kind of bully him in the Senate, or should the unforeseen happen in Georgia and Warnock and Ossoff win. But yeah, he's going to be the leader. He's going to be the guy that they turn to. Even if Schumer is kind of has the title, it's going to be Manchin's going to kind of be the bellwether.
Right.
Don't underestimate Schumer's ability to kind of play that centrist role too. He can kind of get on that liberal horse when he wants to, but he has no problem kind of tacking back to the middle if he needs to.
Yeah, I mean Schumer. Yeah, Schumer is like I think he's just there for power. I don't think he has like any real ideology, to be honest. I don't know if there's any hills that Schumer is going to die on outside of like healthcare, like for Obamacare. But like other than that, I don't really see Schumer dying on any Pacific Hill.
Don't touch those banks.
That's
Don't touch his precious banks. Like
that's
no,
also
Wall
true.
Street. Don't fuck
That's
with them.
also
That's
true.
the money.
Yeah, that's also very true. But the reason why I asked you that, Marcus, is because this centrist bill is being led by pretty much Joe Manchin. Like Joe Manchin is pretty much the face of the centrist bill.
I'm old enough to remember when we were like worried about him getting voted out, like in 2000. I forget when the election was, but he was always one of those guys that was on the fence, like, oh, he's not going to win. How
Every
can he win
single
in West
time.
Virginia? And now he's basically going to be he might be the number 2 in the Senate now, or he's going to be somebody who matters a lot more than he should.
He is going to be, if we win Georgia, he is going to be, I think, more powerful than Chuck Schumer. I think Chuck Schumer, like you said, is going to have the title, but I think he's actually going to be the de facto Senate leader, though.
Yeah, because again, if Manchin defects, if Manchin's like, I can't do this, that's
Right.
gonna give everybody the out. You have to
Right.
basically win over Manchin to get anything done. Should
Ex-
Democrats get an advantage.
Exactly. And yeah, exactly. And I think, like, ideologically, I think he's more in line of like what Joe Biden wants. So because Joe Biden is a big believer in bipartisanship. I don't know
Yes, he
why,
is.
because 8 years of Obama should have taught you bipartisanship died a long time ago. But he is a big believer in bipartisanship, and so is Manchin. So I think like those two ideologically is going to fall in line.
I have to wait and
But
see on that one.
yeah, no, we will. So hopefully we do win Georgia. We'll see about that. When's the election in Georgia? Is that in January?
January 5th.
January 5th, yeah.
January 5th. All right. So we'll keep a close eye on that one. All right, guys. So that's all I have for today's episode. It's been really fun. Ryan, you've been a great guest.
Yes, thanks, Ryan, for coming through.
Know the vibe, man.
All right. We're going to have to talk to producer to get us like a round of applause and give you like a very good formal goodbye for this episode. But guys, this is all I have for this episode. If you do like the podcast, again, support us in any way possible by telling your friends, your family, people that you don't like, people you barely talk to, whoever. But with that said, we are out, guys.